Good morning, everyone. I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap. I usually play a little video in the morning, but I thought that was better because what a great question to ask, right? Voting for Democrats is voting for what? Communism, Marxism, socialism. There's so many different things. Hate, violence. The list could go on. Good morning, Linda. Good morning, Karen. Larry says, please watch Monkey Works. We have surveillance balloons all over the nation picking up data from our computers and cell phones. Been going on for a long time. Well, Larry, that doesn't surprise me, of course, at all. However, if you carry a cell phone, you just have to know that your data is already out there. It doesn't matter if they put a surveillance balloon in my backyard, if they put a what do they call that? A 5G interceptor right there in the front. Makes no difference at all. Because you know what? If you carry one of these little things with you, then everyone knows your data. Not only does the government know every single thing you do and say, but so does anyone who owns an app. I mean, if you any app that's on your phone, whether it's a Chinese app or an American app, wherever it's coming from, they're constantly collecting your data. And that's something that a long time ago, we've talked about this before. A friend of mine who worked at the Pentagon, explained to me a long time ago that the reason why they don't allow cell phones in the Pentagon, when you go to the Pentagon, if you work at the Pentagon, when you go in, they have these lock boxes at each of your departments. You go into the main building, you take your phone, you put it in a lock box, you lock it up, you take the key. When you're leaving for the day, you go back in, you take your phone out. You can't take your phone to your workstation because your phone is always watching, it's always listening. And so therefore, they don't want their cell phones to pick up that sensitive data that is transmitted. So there is nothing we can do about it. The only way that your information is safe from not only the I actually fear the United States government, more than I do anyone else. Because yes, Trump might be the president now, but he's not going to be the president forever. We have no idea what direction things are going to go in. When I talk about some, plan that was uncovered through the Biden administration, it's probably going to blow your mind just a bit, and it's going to kind of reiterate again, you can't trust your own government. Everyone's talking about China, 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 spying on us, having all these apps and TikTok. I could care less about any of that stuff. If you choose to carry a cell phone around with you, guess what? Everything's recorded. That is proven. Everything's recorded. Everything is seen. They can see you through your phone, through your little camera. There used to be a camera, I mean, a phone. They don't have it around anymore. And it was called the BlackBerry World Edition. I had one for a while just out of curiosity. And that was allegedly the phone that Obama did and possibly still does carry because it doesn't have a camera. It doesn't have any tracking capabilities. And so a lot of people like that camera because it cannot listen to you. It doesn't have a speaker on it. It cannot film you because it doesn't have a camera. So those are definitely some things to think about. And we're going to talk about the Biden administration and their surveillance programs here very, very shortly. But I wanted to go back again to, if you came on at the very beginning of the show, it said voting for a Democrat is like voting for what? And it can be I think all of us can come up with a wide range of terms of what that can be. But, most importantly, what I want to say, and this has been on my mind all morning. I don't know. Sometimes I just have those mornings where something's on my mind. And today is definitely one of those days. And that is, it's like when I look around at the Democrats in my community, those people are not the enemy. They might seem like the enemy. Some people on the very, very far left basically are our enemy because they want to harm us. The Biden administration, as we're going to talk about, wanted to harm us. But Democrats you see in your everyday life, they're just normal people. They don't have anything to do with any of it. They keep voting for these Democrat policies, and I would really like to know why. But I think it's just a matter of uneducation. That's all it is. They don't understand, as do a lot of people don't understand what they're voting for. And that's going to be the case with like Mom Donnie today in New York City. People don't understand what they're voting for. And you can look at the Democrats in your community and you can try to explain to them that, hey, you're a pawn just like the rest of us. Because trust me, if you're voting for Republicans, you're a pawn. If you're voting for Democrats, you're a pawn. We're all just a bunch of pawns. The Democrat Party and the Republican Party are truly no different. And we've talked about this so many times. I don't have a lot of respect for anyone that sits on Congress, quite honestly, but it goes so much further than that. When we talk about what are we voting for, those issues don't matter. Do you really think that Chuck Schumer, as a matter of fact, I read a report this morning that Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries approached Donald Trump and they said, you know what, let's end this shutdown. But we need $1.5 trillion dollars for illegals. Now, here's the thing. Do you really think Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries care about illegals at all? No, of course they don't. Do you think either of those guys are losing sleep, wondering if people who are here in our country illegally have health care or that they have food on their table, if they get SNAP benefits, if they get these different kinds of loans? No, they don't care about any of that stuff at all. They could care less if these people eat or have health care. They don't care. It's not about that. It's not about that. What it's about is that $1.5 trillion dollars is going to be dispersed to various NGOs, non governmental organizations, and it's just a big money laundering scheme. So they send that money to the NGOs and it say, oh, this is earmarked for illegals for their food benefits or for their health care or this or that. And really, what's happening is it's going into an NGO. Let's say $1 billion goes to Sally Sue's NGO that she just formed 2 months ago. Well, then that money is being distributed to her personally, to her family. Very little of it is actually going into the program to help feed illegals. It's all just a big joke. And I wish more people would wake up and understand that the money that we're talking about, it's just going to these NGOs. We learned that during Doge, right? The very beginning of Trump's presidency. And then they take that money and they do a couple of different things with it. A, they promote hate within our country. They pay media organizations with that NGO money. They procure votes with that NGO money. It's not about feeding illegals. It's not about providing health care to illegals. And I wish people would wake up and understand that that's not what this is about. These people, this government shutdown is not, it's truly not about feeding or providing health care to people who are here illegally. It's absolutely not. That's the easiest way for them to explain it to us Americans, because it would take a lot longer to say, well, for Donald Trump to stand up on a podium and say, hey, we don't want to give this whatever it is, 1.5 trillion dollars to illegals because we know what's really going to happen. And that's because Democrats are going to take that money and they're going to divide it up amongst themselves. It's going to go in their own pockets. And a lot of it's going to go, to these other organizations that are going to fund Democrat votes for the future. They can't sit down and tell us all that because then no one would have any faith in the government at all. So they've got to say, oh, yeah, they want to give this money to illegals and their health care. It's just all a bunch of propaganda and lies. Good morning, Sherry. Sherry says, don't forget 2 years ago, Kamala's stepdaughter raised millions for Hamas. This was planned. Absolutely, Sherry. And that's exactly what they do. And speaking of, and I'm glad you brought that up, Sherry, because speaking of Hamas, there was a time under Obama where we funded Hamas. We literally funded Hamas directly. Yes, the money was for the Palestinian people, but we knew by giving that money to Hamas that what was going to happen? Kickbacks, yes. Some of that money would come back and be put into the pockets for the people who voted to give Hamas money. Some of it would go to these NGOs. We didn't even know about NGOs really back then, not to the degree we know now. And then a lot of it would just go to the Hamas organization. The Hamas organization would use some of it to give aid to the people, but most of it just went to them to guess what, for kickbacks or to further their agenda. That's all. Now, Donald Trump in his first term changed that policy. He no longer gave the money directly to Hamas. We still supported the Palestinian people. We just went a different way about it. We went a different route, and we went a route where, yes, people were still getting kickbacks. That's just the government. That's going to happen. But the people in the Palestinian area in Gaza got more relief through Donald Trump than what they did through Obama. But we still end up funding, some of that money still goes to Hamas, and that's probably never going to change. Drew says Democrats will send the Republicans a huge message tonight that they want socialism. Drew, is that the message? That they want communism and socialism in our country? And Sherry replied to Drew and said, bought and paid for. The only way they will win, get real. You got that right, Sherry. Bought and paid for. I was looking at the ballot today for New York City. And speaking of, there was some breaking news right as I was getting ready to start the show that 7 different counties in New Jersey have received bomb threats. 7 different counties. Guess what? All Republican leaning counties. Because you know why? That is just intimidation to keep people away from the polls. Because guess what? If you live in a community, your polling location is, let's say, 2 miles from your house, and you're getting ready to go cast your vote, but now you can't because there was a bomb threat at your polling location. How likely are you going to drive to a different area? Are you even going to be able, will they even let you vote, in an area outside of your own polling station? So there's a lot going into that because they're up to their dirty tricks because they can't win without dirty tricks. They cannot win. And somebody sent me a message yesterday about, pro-life and abortion and what my thoughts were and, different things like that, which is a question we haven't really talked about a lot on the show just because it hasn't come up a lot. I think that most of us, if not all of us, are pro-life. I would think if you're listening to the show, you're probably pro-life. I'm certainly pro-life, of course. But it's another situation again that Democrats don't care about abortion. Do you really think Democrats care so emotionally? They get so emotional about it that they really care about those women. They don't care about those women who can or cannot get abortions. What was it? The last time I looked up the numbers, it was about 500,000 abortions every year. Well, think about each of those abortions. How much money of that is going back into these NGOs and to kickbacks for these different representatives who keep abortions legal in these different states? It's all about people lighting their own pocket. And it's so frustrating to me because there is no answer. I've been spending a lot of time lately thinking about how can we unite Democrats and Republicans, or people like I consider myself, people who are in the middle, kind of caught in the middle of Republicans in Congress and Democrats in Congress. Because I'll tell you something you probably already know: Republicans in Congress and Democrats in Congress are largely the same people. There might be a couple good ones out there, but I'm telling you, there are not many, not many. Most of them could care less about any of us. They're there, to control us, is what it is. It's all about control, to get money from you, keep you working every day, keep the money flow going. You go out, you work, and then what is it? 80 cents of every dollar you earn goes back into taxes. Those taxes get funneled into these NGOs, into these different programs. And then in the end, a big portion of that ends up in the pockets of your Congress people. And you can't say it doesn't. You don't, wake up one day and enter Congress. You win your election. You're making, I don't even know what is the congressional salary, about 200,000 a year, 160,000 a year. I can't even remember. And then, but then in what, 2, 3, 4 years, you're a millionaire, a billionaire. I mean, come on, you're not getting that through your salary. That's not book deals and autograph signings and stuff like that. They're stealing your taxpayers' money. That's exactly what that's about. And Dan says 3 ways to cover your bills: you can earn it, or you can steal it, or get Democrats to steal it for you and hand it over. That's pretty much true, Dan. And the latter of those, Democrats steal it for you and hand it over, is how most of it happens, unfortunately. Unfortunately. But I think about when I asked that question at the beginning of the show, I had the little placard up. I'm going to put it up for a second again here. A vote for Democrats is a vote for. I think we all have a lot of different answers for that. But I will tell you one thing: we've got to change the way we think. And I've been saying this as long as I've had a show and have been able to speak the word of politics, is that the Democrat Party is a regime. It is, it's a regime. And the Democrat Party regime, think about it as if you live in another country and there is a regime that has ruled your country for many, many decades. And they may call themselves this party or this party or that party, but really they're the same regime. It's the same people pulling the strings. They might change their name or change their tactics, so that you don't catch on, but they're the same ruling party. And they might put up and allow the citizens to vote, that kind of give you that freedom of, the illusion, I should say, the illusion of choice, that you're choosing to go and vote for who you want, when really they have already selected who you're going to vote, who's going to win. And it doesn't really matter your votes. We learned that, didn't we, through Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders during the primary. What was that, in 2016? Because Bernie Sanders won the primary in votes. He and his team knew that he won the primary in the votes. Hillary Clinton did not win. But it didn't matter because the DNC is a private organization. They're not a government branch. And the DNC said, well, we don't want Bernie Sanders to go up against the Republican candidate. We want it to be Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton was selected, not elected. It is true. It's not just a myth. It's actually true. And we know it's true because Bernie Sanders supporters, I don't think Bernie himself did. It was his supporters that went in and they sued the DNC. And remember the fall of Debbie Wasserman Schultz back in the day when all this occurred, they had to stand up in a court of law under oath and they had to say, you know what, we're a private organization. It doesn't matter who gets the votes. It just matters who we want to be the person that we move forward. And in that case, it wasn't Bernie Sanders. Yes, he had the votes. He was not our selected candidate. Our selected candidate was Hillary Clinton. So Hillary Clinton will be the primary winner. So it is a regime. It's a regime. Just think about it that way. Clear anything, any thoughts you have. The Democrat Party is a regime. Now the problem is a lot of Democrats don't understand that they support a regime. If you go out and talk to Democrats, I know a lot of moderate Democrats, that's for sure. And if I were to go and talk to them and say, every time you vote Democrat policies, you're voting to keep the same regime in place. And the same regime is what holds people back. It doesn't support capitalism. It doesn't allow people to get up out of that level of poverty. It just keeps people down. They'll say, well, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. They just don't get it. They don't get it. And Jay says, why else would they spend millions to get elected for a job that pays 170,000 a year? Exactly, Jay. Jay, I've never heard it put that way, but you're absolutely right. And to your point, Jane, as I know is that a lot of that money sometimes comes out of their own pockets. There are people who want to win a congressional seat and they spend a lot of money out of their own pockets. Millions of dollars of donor money, whatever personal money they have to contribute. Maybe you guys know of one. I don't know of any poor person that's ever won a seat in Congress. Now, some people, well, let me take that back. Let me take that back. There have been people who don't have personal money who have won a seat in Congress, but there are people who are heavily funded by these different NGOs. Because as soon as I said that, I started thinking, well, Jasmine Crockett, we have Cori Bush. Those people didn't have two dimes to rub together before they ended up in these positions, but they're heavily funded through these different NGOs that want to, guess what, destroy our country. So we're going to see more destruction of our country taking place in New York City today. Because I didn't save the photo to put on the show today, but I did see the ballot. It was definitely, kind of a joke, but Mamdani's name was front and center, first person all the way to the left. As soon as you look at the ballot, his name is going to be the first name you see. Well, guess where Cuomo is? And this is a pretty large ballot. Cuomo is all the way at the very last line of the ballot, all the way to the far right. Now, doesn't that tell you something? Now, why wouldn't Cuomo be right next to Mamdani? Mamdani's name first, Cuomo's here, Cuomo first, Mamdani there, whatever. Why aren't those two names the two front runners right there in the very front? But instead, Mamdani front and center, very first name you read, Cuomo, very last name you read. And that should tell you a lot right there. Mamdani's going to win, according to Polymarket, which I believe, Polymarket's pretty good about things. Yes, Jane, New York City is absolutely screwed. And Polymarket gives Mamdani a 91% chance of winning. And I never thought I would be in a position where I wanted Cuomo to win anything. If any of you who used to listen to the show back in the days of The Edge, when I was on with, of course, Chris and Vic and Eric, we used to have a guest come on. His name was Joe Murray, and he's from New York City. He had run for the assistant DA. He's an attorney there. If you guys remember, he would call Cuomo a moron, and it was just the funniest thing ever back then. And I talked to him the other day because, of course, he lives in New York City, and I'm like, "What do you think about Mamdani?" And he's like, "I got out of Dodge. I moved to Long Island. Yes, it still affects me, but I'm not right there anymore." And I didn't realize this, kind of on a side note, but remember how George Santos just recently, I can't recall exactly what happened with him. I guess he received not a pardon, but somehow he was released. Right now, I can't come to the right word. Well, that was Joe Murray that did that. Joe Murray, who used to be our guest on the show, was George Santos's attorney. So he's very busy. I had hoped he could come on the show and talk to us about Mamdani. He's going to come on another time, but he's very busy because he was able to get, George Santos out of jail and released. All these people are calling him wanting them to handle his, their cases. So that's turned into a really big deal. And let's see. Sherry says his name is in there twice. Oh, I did not even know that, Sherry. I didn't know his name was on there twice. I just looked at the front and the top, like people were telling me where their names were. I didn't look through any of that middle area. Jay says Democrats and Republicans pretty much surrendered this election with two horrible candidates. Yes, yes, they did. Drew, because Cuomo did win the primary. Well, Cuomo is a complete idiot. He really is. He is also not good for New York City. But Mom Downey brings in something completely different. And even for the moderate Democrats that I know, I don't even think they fully understand exactly what's going to happen here. And it'll be interesting to see it play out. I see it as a big experiment. And thankfully and hopefully it won't hurt the rest of us if we don't live in the state of New York. But it's going to be an interesting concept to see how someone who is truly a jihadist, he is absolutely a communist, Marxist jihadist. I don't care if that upsets anyone or not. This is not against the Muslim religion, even though you guys hate for me to say this. I support, the freedom of religion in the United States. If you're Muslim, I support your right to be Muslim, to study Islam. I know most of you don't agree with me on that, but that is truly how I feel. But I also know people who are Muslim who absolutely do not see. That's where Sharia law comes in. Sharia law is about so many different things, and one of those is ultra conservative. Where they have to pray, 5 times a day. They have to cover, their bodies and so on. Well, there are a lot of Muslims in this country who absolutely do not practice. Now, if you talk to one of these people who would be like a Mamdani, they'll say, well, that person's not really practicing Islam, or they're not really Muslim if they're not following the laws under Sharia and they're not praying their 5 times a day and doing these other things. And so there is, of course, that we have to think about. But there's a lot of people in this country who don't understand what radicalization is. They don't understand that somebody like Mamdani is radicalized. When you go out another point people aren't going to probably like on the other side me saying, but if when you go into New York City and you see these no-go zones, or you go into New York City or Dearborn, Michigan, or part Beaumont, Texas, there's so many places around the country, and you hear the sound coming from the mosque and you see the people getting down on the ground to pray, often blocking traffic these days, those people are radicalized. Most of those people are radicalized. And by radicalization doesn't necessarily mean that they want to harm you or kill you, but some of them do. But it means that they want their religion to rule in any given area. And that's what's going to happen in New York City. And we know that Mamdani is going to push that through as much as he possibly can. He is going to make sure that these no-go zones, that they become larger, that they become more prolific. We already know that's going to happen. He's already said that's going to happen. That's exactly his goal. But for me saying that, people would probably say I'm an Islamophobic or something along those lines, and that's not true. It's just a reality. You can go back and you can listen to his speeches. He is very heavily radicalized. But here's the thing. I really do think, now this is just me saying this, I don't have any proof of it. I think Mamdani was another selected person. They selected him for a lot of different reasons. One, he's very articulate. B, he's an attractive guy. And C, he allegedly has a very charming personality. And so those three combinations together kind of reminds me of Obama in a way, and some of the other selected, not elected folks. And what they do is they go out. I don't. Some people say it's the CIA. Some people say that it's the Democrat regime and the folks that pull the strings. I don't know who it is exactly, but I do believe that they go out and they find these different people, Obama being one of them, who has these different characteristics. And they say, okay, I can see this person will go very far. People will like them. It's sad to say, but it's true. If somebody's attractive, they're more relatable. And so they're looking for somebody who's attractive, somebody who's articulate, somebody who has that charming personality, because they know that person will get the votes. So I don't think that Mamdani is a natural occurrence. I think that he was selected, and I think they have big plans for him. So we really need to start wondering, what are those big plans? Is he going to be the mayor? then maybe what there? Maybe the governor? Is he going to run for president in a couple years? We just don't know. And what we really have to be careful for too, as we see all this play out in New York City, is maybe things will go well. Is the first, let's say, his first term as mayor of New York City, maybe it will go really well. And then guess what's going to happen? There's going to be other towns, other states are going to say, you know what, we never thought that plan would work, but it is working. And then they start adopting those plans. Well, then the next thing when the reality sets in, it's too late. It kind of reminds me of I know this is a weird analogy. I'm going to feel like Eric Johnson for a minute, but I dated a guy once a long time ago, many, many years ago. And he was just the nicest person for like a whole 6 months. Just as nice as could be, opening doors and doing all these, gentlemanly things, always very sweet and nice to me. Then all of a sudden, he just like turned on a dime and he was just mean and a jerk. And I'm like, what in the world happened to you? You were so nice. All of a sudden, you're not. And he's like, well, for those 6 months, I did what I had to do to get you. I was really nice. I did all these really nice things. And now that I have you, I don't have to be nice anymore. Now you can see, my true self coming out. And this is a true story, by the way. And I was completely floored, completely floored. And again, this was a really many, many years ago. But I feel like the same situation with Mom Donnie. They're going to have him come out. He's going to just be that dream child. He's going to do all these great things for New York City, and everything's going to seem like it's working really well. And other people start adopting, and other people get used to the idea of how socialism is working in New York City. And the next thing you know, all hell's going to break loose because then the reality will come out. But all we can do is sit back and watch, because you know what? We have no choice in the matter. There is absolutely nothing we can do. Nothing we can do. Jay says Democrats and Republicans pretty much surrendered this election with two horrible candidates. And oh, I already read that. Yes, you are absolutely correct. Correct. So, you know what? It'll be an interesting time for the rest of us. We will see history in the making. We'll see it all playing out. New York City, thankfully, far away from most of us, will be our test case. And I'm not going to fall for it. Even when things go well, I'm not going to fall for it. I'm going to say, you know what? That's propaganda. They're just trying to draw us all in, but we're not going to fall for it, because we know what happens when the reality sets in, because they can only hide, the truth for so long. And then the reality and the true personality of what's going on with socialism will definitely be there. Other things to talk about. Let's see here. Mark Levin. I don't watch Fox National. I know a lot of you may or may not. I don't watch any news. I don't have time. I seriously don't have time. I work and I try to get a couple hours of sleep. I read, which I do at night because I'm a terrible insomniac, but I do not watch the news. I haven't watched Mark Levin on Fox National in a very long time, but I like him and I will see his videos and I'll see clips and excerpts and things like that. And back when I had more time to watch more TV shows, I did watch Mark Levin. I really liked him, but I don't know what is going on with that guy. I really have no idea. All of a sudden, he hates Tucker Carlson. Did you know that? He absolutely hates Tucker Carlson. And he's been talking about this for, I don't know, a week, 2 weeks now, where he's trying to warn Americans that you cannot and should not follow Tucker Carlson. Now, he's against Candace Owens and a couple other people too. And I've not been able to get to the bottom of why. I'm thinking it's because he doesn't like Tucker Carlson speaking about Israel, Candace Owens speaking about Israel, is what I'm going to guess. And I don't really know that to be fact, but I thought it was really strange because his latest statement, I just read this early this morning, and he said that Americans should be afraid of Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson, that we should be afraid of these two people. And I think that's just an odd statement coming from Mark Levin, because, to me, no matter what your religious priority is, or a lot of different factors can come into play when it comes into politics. Why would he tell people we need to be afraid of Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes? It doesn't really make any sense to me. Now, Tucker Carlson, I again haven't watched TV in a long time. I know I think he still has that show on X. I'm not even 100% positive. I'm assuming so. I still hear his statements. I see little excerpts, here and there when I'm reading the news. And he seems like he's still going strong. But most of the time when I see him now, everything he's speaking is very much truthful, just like it always was. Still uncovering the truth. He's still talking about a lot of things. And he's talked a lot lately about UFOs and extraterrestrials, meaning interdimensional beings. And so we'll talk about that on another day. But if you want to go out and see any Tucker Carlson clips, you'll hear an awful lot of truth. But I think Mark Levin speaks a lot of truth too. So I really hate to see those two not getting along. But for those who support Fox National, just keep in mind, what did they do to Tucker Carlson? Right? They was a little bit too much truth for Fox National. That's why I do not watch them. I don't have anything to do with them. And I didn't even before that. And Jay says, I don't trust Levin that much. I'm starting to wonder myself. I always really liked him. Drew says that's the most that's how most relationships start out. Good for about 6 months, then all hell breaks loose. Been there. That's why I'm single, Drew. That's exactly why I'm single because I don't. Again, that was a very long time ago. I've met a lot of nice people and had a relationship since then that was pretty decent. But yeah, relationships aren't for everyone. And let's see, Mr. Parnow, Israel is the biggest pusher because Israel is losing their control over the current generation. All religion to some degree is losing control over these current generations, more so here in the United States because I was reading a lot about Christianity recently, and Christianity is still the world's largest religion. It is still growing exponentially in a lot of countries, but it's declining in the United States, which is kind of odd. Religion in general is declining in the United States. And no question, that is because we have all of these puppets put into place who speak out and people take them, seriously. They listen to their advice when really they're just trying to funnel money to these NGOs. And the same goes, for Israel. This is not against the country of Israel. It's not against Israelis by any means, but every single government, I don't care who they are, every single government, it's all just about money and power, whether that's United States or Israel or Russia or China. It's all the same. All of us people, unless you have a seat sitting in Congress, all of us people, we're all the same. We're all just pawns. Now, what's interesting, the transformation you see when somebody gets elected into Congress. Now, that's an interesting one to see because when somebody's first elected, they really are there for the right reasons. I really do think so. They're there for the right reasons, and most of them anyway. They're out there, they're trying to do their thing, they're trying to help. They're like, they've waited their whole life to fight certain issues. And then they get there and they see how the game works. And they also see where if they don't play the game, guess what? They're not going to keep their job. So they have to continue to play the game. And as a result of that, yes, they do gain personal wealth. But I don't trust anyone in Congress. Not going to happen. Mary says there is power in the blood of Jesus Christ. Yes, there is, Mary, and more people need to wake up and understand that. We've been seeing a little bit of a revival of Christianity here in the United States, but the numbers are still declining. It's great to see. We have all these faith-based films that are doing so well, and that really helps, I think. Remember what was it that movie I really liked it? Jesus Revolution. I absolutely loved that movie. And if you haven't seen Jesus Revolution, definitely go back and take a look at that because there's possibilities here to really have some serious revivals taking place. And that was happening for a short time, but we've got to keep it going. We have to keep it going. We have to promote Christianity above all else. No question about that. But to make a point though, there's a lot of people in our country who don't follow any religion at all. That doesn't necessarily make them bad people. So I always want to make sure I add that in because I know a lot of people, I have family members who absolutely do not believe in God, they don't believe in Jesus, but they would never harm anyone. Yes, their soul might not be saved. Very true, but they're not going to go out, they're not going to be a bad citizen, they're not going to end up in prison. They don't, they're not going to cheat, steal to get ahead. That's not just because they're not Christian. So that would be a bigger topic for another day. SNAP benefits. I'm just going to run through some things I've got here. SNAP benefits, they've decided they're going to use emergency funds to partially send out those SNAP benefits. So if you're somebody who's on SNAP benefits, you're not going to get your entire benefit right now. Your benefits are going to be delayed. You're going to get a partial benefit. I've heard it's going to be just about half of what you would normally receive. Now, I do not know, and I haven't had time to check. I do think that at the end of the shutdown, if there's any benefits you have not yet received, I think those will be funded to you. I can't promise that, but that is what I'm hearing. I haven't really had time to look into that. Something that's going on today that's kind of a really big deal, in my opinion anyway, is boots on the ground in Mexico. Now, we've talked about this for a long time. It's bound to happen. We know that Donald Trump, what the very top of his agenda, of course, is ending the drugs coming into the country, the human trafficking, the pedophiles coming into our country, the terrorists coming into our country, and the cartels in general. And we know this may or may not be part of the situation, but we know there are true terror organizations. ISIS has camps set up just on the other side of our border in Mexico. That's been happening for a long time now. That's not new. They've been training the cartels for a very long time and different types of terror tactics. And while we say that, yes, we're going to go in, boots on the ground, hopefully no American lives lost, I kind of think it's going to be one of those situations where we probably won't even know. After it's there, after it's done, then all of a sudden we're going to say, oh, yeah, US forces, special forces went into Mexico. They took out these drug manufacturing plants. They either took out or arrested these leaders of these various cartels. I don't think, and I hope and pray we're not going to lose any American lives during this type of situation, but I think it's going to happen very quickly. We'll send in our special forces. We've already done all of the reconnaissance. We already know where the manufacturing facilities are. We already know where the or the cartel leaders are. We know where everything is, logistically. We just have to go in there and do what we need to do. And sometimes you just can't do that through airstrikes. It has to be boots on the ground. I expect it to go seamlessly, quietly. We'll find out about it later. And I think it's a necessary thing. I never like to think that we need to put boots on the ground in any country. I hate the thought of it, quite honestly. I don't like the thought of endangering the lives of our special forces troops and so on. But I think it's necessary. We have hundreds of thousands of people in this country dying from drug overdoses. We have entire city blocks where people have taken so much of what they call trank, where they're permanently bent over. You see those videos of people laying in the street, shooting up and passed out, and they all just become victims. It's a very bad situation. We have to stop the drug trade into the United States. It's not going to be easy. Taking out these cartel leaders and manufacturing, that's going to set them back. It's not going to stop them, but we just have to keep at it. And it's very important to do so. And it's one of the things that Donald Trump is doing that I absolutely 100% support. Same with what's going on in Venezuela. I hate to see people's lives lost, but us taking out those drug boats coming out of the Caribbean is an absolute must. We have to do it. Whether we like it or not, we have to do it because we have to protect our children. And that, unfortunately, is the biggest problem we're facing here. One of the biggest problems in the United States is our children are getting a hold of drugs. I have a friend that this happened to, where her daughter, fairly young, she was a young adult, not quite a teenager, but she got a hold of a pill that she didn't know what it was, took it, and she died. And it's happening all across our country. The people who are intentionally, of course, ingesting drugs, drug addicts, people who are not intentionally trying to ingest these drugs, and they all get mixed in with different things in the manufacturing. You just don't know what you have. We've just got to stop it from coming into our country. That's the easiest solution. I don't think any of you will disagree with that. And yesterday we had Colonel Joe Adams on, and we talked about Nigeria. So I wanted to add that in really quick. This is kind of funny in a way. Nigeria, they of course they don't want troops on the ground in Nigeria. I personally believe that the government of Nigeria is very complicit with the terrorist activities and the attack on Christianity that's happening in their country. But because of what Donald Trump said, because of the possibility that we could potentially have airstrikes in Nigeria or have boots on the ground in Nigeria, they don't want us there. They do not want us there. They just want to continue on living their lives and harassing people and murdering people. So, and more drug trade, of course, in Nigeria as well, along with a lot of other things. They don't want us there. So the government of Nigeria has said, all right, Donald Trump, we get the message. We're going to make arrests. We're going to go out. We're going to break up these terror groups. And supposedly they're sending their troops out. They're breaking up the terror groups. They're arresting the terror group leaders. They're making sure that no one is bullying or harassing or harming the Christians in Nigeria. Now, I'm sure this is all theater and for show. No, they don't want us there. How long is this going to last? When you go to a country like Nigeria, the government, they support these terrorists. 99% of the time, if these terrorists in their country, guess what? They support them. No different from the Biden administration, right? When Biden was here, look at all the terrorists that came in. And do you think that Biden was trying to get those terrorists out? No. Absolutely not. They were supporting terrorism, weren't they? They were bringing the terrorists in, like literally bringing the terrorists in. I mean, Nicolas Maduro, the president of Venezuela, told the Trump administration, we know this is a fact, that Joe Biden asked him to send Tren de Aragua gang members to the United States. He asked them to do it. Maybe not Joe Biden himself, but the auto pen or someone speaking for Joe Biden. And speaking of that, this is going to probably blow your mind. I know it kind of blows my mind. Am I surprised? Kind of. I didn't think anything the Biden administration would do would really surprise me, but this did kind of surprise me. So the Trump administration has uncovered documents that detail a plan that had Biden been successfully reelected, they had a list of Americans. I don't know if you guys heard about this or not. A list of Americans. There were 700 Americans on that list. Of those 700 Americans, 12 Americans were put aside, their names were put aside to neutralize. So, what does that mean? So, we have 700 Americans on a list. Now, those 700 Americans were going to be surveilled, probably harassed, people that were under, some type of would be under a surveillance state if Biden won a second term. They wanted to silence those 700 people. Now, how would they silence them? We'll get to those 12 others here in a second, but how would you silence 700 people? First of all, I don't know who these 700 people are. I don't know how they made the list, Biden's list, neutralization list, but somehow they were on there. Were they going to weaponize the IRS against these 700 people? Weaponize the Department of Justice against the 700 people? I don't know. And again, I don't know who those 700 people are. I can guess. I'm sure you can guess too, because there's a lot of people who are probably a real pain in the butt to the Biden administration, telling way too much truth. But here's the crazy part: the 12 people, a list of 700 that were to be surveilled and silenced. Another 12 were to be neutralized. Now, I only heard the term neutralize. I don't, does neutralize mean that they were going to take these people out? How do you neutralize people? And you have to remember, it must be something different than surveil and silence, because the other 700 were going to be surveilled and silenced. 12 neutralized. And also I heard those that a lot of those 700 people, they were going to remove them from the country. Now, how can you just remove a citizen from the country? Let's say that the Biden administration didn't like Tucker Carlson. I'm sure Tucker Carlson's name is on that list. So let's just say, I mean, how would they successfully take him and move him to another country other than to prosecute him and say, make a deal with him, say, hey, Tucker Carlson, we don't want you here anymore. You got to leave. But that just goes to show how the Democrat regime feels about Americans, that they could make a list of 700 Americans that they were going to be surveilled, silenced, potentially deported to another country, and 12 neutralized. I mean, I don't know about you, but the only thing I can think of when I think of neutralized means that they were going to be done away with, not put in prison, not silenced, killed. I mean, that's what I think. I don't know what you guys think, but that's how it sounds to me. And Sherry says, Christie said there are 5,000 people on the terror watch list getting benefits to boot. I've heard that, Sherry, and yes, in our country we support terrorism and radicalization, which under the Biden administration anyway, it is crazy. I know we talked yesterday with Colonel Joe Adams about the CDLs and how so many of those CDLs had the same name on them. I was reading a report yesterday by the USDA. I'm sure you guys saw this report, I would assume. And they were saying, well, we wanted to know how many people are receiving SNAP benefits, how many people are in our country illegally getting SNAP benefits. And of course, they were sued by 2 different states for just asking the question, and I think it was 21 states complied and gave them their numbers, 29 didn't. I might have that number reversed. Of course, none of the blue states would comply with those records. And one of the things they uncovered is, again, just what you're kind of to what you're stating, Sherry, is that there are a lot of people in this country who are on the terror watch list who are receiving SNAP benefits, true, and other benefits on top of that. And it's a pretty crazy thought when you really put your mind to it, isn't it? What the Biden administration was doing, and they're going to do it again. That's why we've got to stay on top of these elections. They're going to do it again. I think all of us kind of think that when in 2028, JD Vance is going to be an easy shoe-in. right? Some people think it's going to be Don Jr. There's a lot of different names being tossed around. I don't think it's going to be quite as easy as what we think. I think they're going to pull out every tactic they can because, again, they're not a political party, they're a regime. And we staged a coup. We don't even realize we staged a coup, but we, the American people, did stage a coup. We staged a coup in 2016, and we staged another coup in 2024. And by that, we gathered together, we went against the regime, we staged a coup, we put the regime out of power, we put our candidate into power. If we lived in another country, these are the terms they would be using. Is it would be a coup by we the American people against the regime that has ruled us for decades. And can we possibly stage another coup in 2028? Because that's how what we're going to have to do to win in 2028. It's not as easy as just okay, if you go out and cast your vote, JD Vance is going to win. No, we have to go against all their tactics and their tricks. Now, see, the reason why it worked in 2024 is because Elon Musk, mostly Elon Musk, Charlie Kirk with Turning Point, these groups paid people like myself. I was one of those people that was paid to do this. Our goal was to get out and win the election in the early vote. That was the strategy. If you can win in the early vote, then when they start their tricks, it's too late. We've already won. And that plan worked for us with Donald Trump. We won in the early vote in all these pivotal states. And Democrats know, we're not going to be able to use that plan again. So we're going to have to come up with something different. But in 2024, it worked because we went out. These guys, Elon Musk, Charlie Kirk, paid people a lot of money to go out and tell people. That was our entire goal when I was in Georgia for those 42 days, is telling people, vote early. Don't wait until election day. Go as soon as this is the day you're able to go out and vote. Go out today and cast that vote. Do it before they can cheat. In 2028, we have to find another game plan. I don't know what that game's plan is going to be. I would certainly suggest going to Turning Point USA, going to America PAC, go online, register yourself to help because these groups will have a plan. And in 2028, you can be part of that plan. And if I felt better, I would be out there right now, in these different states trying to make sure that the right candidates got into place. My body's not up for that right now. But there are ways that we can help. So do your part. Go out, go onto the America PAC website, go onto the Turning Point USA website and register yourself. And yes, they're going to contact you at some point down the road. And they're going to say, hey, Jay, do you want to come out to Wisconsin? Do you want to come to Michigan? Do you want to come to Pennsylvania? We'll pay you X number of dollars per week. Turning Point was paying by the week. I think it was like was it $2,500 a week? I can't recall. And then of course America PAC was paying by the hour, and there was different bonuses. I think in the end it came out to be about $48 an hour to work for America PAC to go out and get the early vote for Donald Trump, I think is how it was. And so, register. They'll contact you. They really will. And they'll say, hey, do you want to come out and help us canvass neighborhoods? Or this is the plan. This is what we're going to do to win in this election. We've got to start thinking about it now because there is no shoe in. There really is no shoe in. The Democrats, not the Democrat people we know, the people who pull the strings, they're already working out plans. Look what happened today. Like I said earlier, New Jersey, 7 different areas of New Jersey have received bomb threats. All were Republican leaning, areas. They're going to do anything they can to make sure you can't get out and vote. Trust me on that one. They're going to do anything they can to make sure that doesn't happen. Pelosi, and here's exactly what part of the problem is Pelosi. I'm going to play this quick video here. This lady did I load it? Maybe I didn't load the video of Pelosi. Well, that's weird. Well, I had it. I guess we won't be playing that video of Nancy Pelosi. I loaded a different video instead. Well, Nancy Pelosi gave an interview. She said that she's not going to come up for reelection. Thank God is all I can say about that. Because, it's kind of funny for such kind of an elderly woman. You wouldn't think that Nancy Pelosi, she's not a communist. She's not. Nancy Pelosi is definitely not a communist. She's not one of these vile people, outside of wanting money. That's all it is. She could care less about these Democrat policies. Absolutely could care less. What she cares about is building personal wealth. Because what is she worth? Billions of dollars at this point? I can't recall the exact number I heard, but I heard that she went from millions to billions at some point over the past 2 years. And I can't verify that, but if not, I know it's extremely, extremely close. And yes, I understand that her husband owns a company where a lot of money has been funneled into. So Nancy Pelosi gave an interview and she was talking about Donald Trump and how he is just the most vile creature on the planet. And the reporter asked her, "What do you really think he's that bad?" And she's like, "Oh, he's worse than rapists. He's worse than killers. He's worse than all these different things." And they said, "Well, why do you feel that way?" She goes, "Because he doesn't follow the Constitution." Now, you know that Nancy Pelosi could care less about the Constitution. Democrats in Congress could care less about the Constitution. What she doesn't like is that Donald Trump put Doge into place. He made sure that money was not being funneled to all these NGOs that made people like her a millionaire or a billionaire. That's why she doesn't like Donald Trump. He's a vile creature because, some people might say, and trust me, if you're a Democrat, Drew Collins, you're probably already thinking this. Well, they don't like Donald Trump because he's a rapist. He was friends with Jeffrey Epstein. He was a womanizer. He cheated on his wife. No, they were all friends with him back then. Back then, when Donald Trump was seen in those photos with Jeffrey Epstein, when Donald Trump was getting his divorces, he was friends with all those people. He was friends with Hillary, excuse me, and Bill Clinton. He knew all of them. They invited him to his parties. It has nothing to do with that. They don't like him because he stopped the gravy train. That's all it is. Nothing more than that. Sherry says Pelosi belongs to a crime family. Yeah, how think about that too. How many people in Congress have families that are crime families that belong to crime families? Probably quite a few. I'm going to start coughing. If I start coughing, I'm not going to be able to stop. So I wanted to go through. The only other thing I really wanted to talk about today, two different things, and I'll go through these kind of quickly. I'm sure you guys got other things to do. I have to work. Hopefully, I'll have my voice the rest of the day. Chat GPT. I'm just kind of getting to like Chat GPT. I haven't really used it a lot, but I've been relying on it more lately out of curiosity. It's just asking what it says, questions, and it comes out really well. If there's certain things you want to do, like a marketing plan, you could ask ChatGPT, "Hey, this is what I want to market. What's the best way to market my product?" And it will tell you. And I think it's very valuable in that type of situation. But now ChatGPT, in order to reduce legal liability, it is no longer going to be able to give medical, legal, or financial advice. So if you go to ChatGPT and you ask it for financial advice, "Hey, where should I invest my money?" It can no longer tell you. If you say, "Okay, these are my symptoms. Can you tell me what illness I might have?" Or it can give you some information, but it cannot tell you what any type of diagnosis could be. You could go to ChatGPT and say, "Hey, my doctor said this. What do you think?" No more. No more. And I think that was pretty interesting because, I think too many people rely on AI because we feel like a computer knows everything, that everything's been programmed into it. It has all these facts, it can analyze the facts. But I have caught ChatGPT being wrong on a couple of different occasions, as have many other people. I was just reading an article about it the other day where some technical people were joking because they're like, "Yeah, everybody refers to ChatGPT for answers, and then Chat GPT will give you the wrong answer. And when you correct them on it, the Chat GPT will be like, 'Oh, you're right. I was wrong.'" Yes, Chat GPT can absolutely be wrong. Just because it's a computer does not going to mean it's going to be right all the time. And that's why people, worry about AI and, "Oh, AI is going to take over the world." AI can't even answer all of the questions correctly. So I'm not sure if that's true. It has helped some people win the lottery. And I'm pretty sure they have disabled that function, so I can't do that anymore. It was kind of funny that when people were trying, and I did a little experiment on that myself, and guess what? I did actually win 5 times. Not I won the Powerball number and, like, one other number, but it was just an experiment. I wrote about it on, Facebook. I don't play the lottery. I need to start playing. Who knows? Maybe I would win. And the last thing I wanna talk about today before we head out, oh, wait, let's see here. And Jay says, "Because they'll get sued." You're right, Jay. Because if just think about that, if somebody has, let's say you cashed out your 401k plan, you have $70,000, you want to invest that plan. So you think, "You know what? I don't have time to do the research. I'm going to go to Chat GPT and say, 'Hey, Chat GPT, how should I invest my $70,000 to get the maximum return, as part of my retirement plan?'" Well, Chat GPT will, trust me, they will give you a very thorough answer. They will build spreadsheets for you and all this other stuff. And then you think, "Gosh, it's a computer. this computer knows exactly what it's talking about. It's going to do all the work for me. And then you lose all your money. And that has happened. It has actually happened. So do not count on ChatGPT to give you any legal, medical, professional advice. Just take it with a grain of salt. That's all. And let's see, Jay says AI isn't developing its own thoughts, it's responding with information it's been programmed with. And Jay, and that's where the scary part, I guess, comes in for a lot of people, because you have to think, if the wrong people are programming the information in there, then that's all Chat GPT knows. And a lot of people go through and they compare, they ask the same question to Grok as they do to Chat GPT, and sometimes get similar answers, sometimes very different answers. So it absolutely does depend on what somebody programs in. And if AI were to take over in other capacities, be an AI on your computer, what are they going to do? But in other capacities, I could see where maybe it could get dangerous depending on what somebody was feeding into it. And let's see, Sherry says, I just asked Chat GPT about thyroid, and did you, and it lined it all out. I'm not sure what you mean, Sherry. Like a thyroid issue. Speaking of Chat GPT, I've had obviously some of these health issues, and when you start getting test results back, it can be a little bit confusing. Now, I like to do a lot of experiments. So, I got one test result back. I think most of you know by now, I had a biopsy on Friday of my lymph nodes. And I also had a bronchial washing, what they call a BAL, some type of bronchial lavage, something like that. And some of the results are starting to trickle in. And one of the results, most of them showed nothing. There's just nothing there. Didn't grow any organisms. There's no bacterial infection. There's just nothing. So I mean, that those reports are obvious. I haven't gotten any of the reports back for my for the lymph node biopsy yet. But one of the reports I got back was from the washing, and it said, okay, here are the cells that we found. X percentage of this cell, X percentage of this cell, X. I don't know what that means, and I put it into like a Chat GPT just to see what it said. And it is kind of interesting because this must be before they made the rule, but before they blocked it from doing this. But it said that, okay, well, based on your test results, these are the different diagnoses you could expect to see. And it was kind of interesting because I'm like, okay, but but you can't trust it. You got to talk to your doctor, not to the Chat GPT. So last thing I want to get into before I make a run for it, before I start coughing again, is Anna Paulina Luna. We've talked on this show a lot about the various comets that are coming through our solar system, particularly 3I Atlas. We have to talk about it because it's such a big news story. Now, I personally have said many times, and we'll say again, I personally think it's just a comet. I don't think there's anything more to it. And I know some people will be like, yep, you're right. It's just a comet. Some people will be like, you're crazy. Obviously, there's something more to it. And I understand why people do think there's more to it. Now, I think there's something more going on. I still think that Atlas is just a comet, but I do think that there's some type of propaganda going on, a propaganda campaign going on around it. And I don't understand what it is, or I'm just completely wrong and it's really not a comet at all. But there's definitely something going on because there's too many people talking about it, too many situations where NASA won't supply the information for the comet. They don't want to show us what it looks like. But I mean, there's only so much you can see. There's a lot of independent people out there who have some really high powered telescopes. And when they show you what the telescope looks like, it just looks like a glowing dot. I mean, there's not really a whole lot you can see on these different telescopes. Anything you see that looks like a mothership or a spaceship or some giant rock floating, that's not real. That's just AI or somebody's imagination because they can't see any type of image of what it is. Yes, they think it might be cylindrical in shape, be longer, versus wider. It's not round, but that's really all they know. And they only got that much information because they superimposed many, many dozens of images together to kind of get an idea that it was something that's elongated. But other than that, they say they don't know anything. Now you'll see a lot of other people who say, well, the government intentionally turned off the rover, the Mars rover, when it was closest to Mars. And I'll say again, I don't think there's a rover on Mars. I think that rover's out on a soundstage somewhere out in the desert somewhere here in the United States, not on Mars. And so that to me doesn't really mean a whole lot of anything. But what I do think is interesting is NASA does have a lot of information on three-eye atlas, and they will not refuse it. So Anna Paulina Luna, and she is one of the very few members of Congress that I absolutely love. Anna Paulina Luna is right on top of everything. And she has sent a letter, I'll post it later, but she sent a letter to Sean Duffy at NASA, of course, director of NASA, if I can get that out. And she wants to learn some information. She wants them to release the records, release the photos that they have on Three Eye Atlas, and they want to know, okay, well, what is it we're looking at? What exactly are you seeing? Why, and more importantly, why isn't this information being shared with the public? What are you trying to hide? And it does make you wonder, what are they trying to hide, or are they trying to hide anything at all? And Sherry says, my favorite Martian told us they were real. And there's a lot of really weird things going on, Sherry. I know Sherry's right on top of everything. So Sherry, I know you know what I'm talking about. So a lot of people think that we're in the midst of a Project Bluebeam, that the government, whether that be Donald Trump administration or whether that be the CIA acting alone, we don't know, or some other powers that be, they think that this is a Project Bluebeam type situation where they're trying to tell and hype up Americans about these interdimensional beings. Because if you look, it's everywhere. Everybody's talking about UFOs. Everybody's talking about recent sightings. Supposedly, there's sightings just happening all over the place right now. And then we've got this video. I'm going to show this to you. Now, here's a woman. She's in Indiana, and she claims that she goes to this park every single day. And now all of a sudden today, there's this little like pillar in the middle of the park that wasn't there before. And if you look at this, I mean, she doesn't touch it, but it looks like it's heavy. I don't know. I'm not there. Maybe I'll drive to Indiana today and look if I can figure out where this park is. But she says that the statue just came out of nowhere. So it's weird things like this video. This is just representative, one little tiny thing. I've seen so many videos like this of people saying, you know what, I saw an unusual spacecraft fly above my house yesterday. I saw lights in the water, off the coast. I was up in an airplane and I saw this smoke ring. What was it? All these just like weird phenomena happening all at once. It used to be here, there, or there. Go on to what does they call it? MUFON, MUFON. It's crazy. Everybody's seeing something. There's a lot of weird junk going on. And a lot of people are tying that to the passing of Atlas. Now, I don't myself know enough about that stuff to be able to tie those things together, but some people think that all of these different little UAPs, UFOs that people are seeing are little satellites, coming away from whatever Atlas mothership is. I don't personally believe that, but I'm going to show you this video. This is a mystery in an Indiana park.
Hey, can somebody please explain to me what this is? Because it appeared out of nowhere. There's not a single plaque around it. It looks like it either came up from the ground or plopped down from the sky. Upon further inspection, it has markings like a bird, a boat, a fish. There's a wolf over here, a turtle, a flamingo, I don't know, a crane maybe, a bear. What's strange is I come to this park every day to walk my dog. And normally it's just a big open field, but today, this has appeared. And there isn't a plaque. Like I said, no plaque. It looks like it was dropped out of the sky or came up from the ground. So should I call a historical society? Did someone from the Parks and Rec department drop it off? I just want to say it here. I found it. If that makes any difference, TM.
So that's kind of odd, and that's exactly when I saw this. I thought, well, that's odd. I don't know this person. Is she telling the truth? Did it blow there? Does it really just look like it's a big heavy rock and it's really not? Did it fall from the sky? Did somebody place it there with intent to make people think, gee, something weird is going on? I honestly don't know. This could be AI. This lady might not have seen a darn thing, just trying to get views. I don't know. But what I do know is that these types of videos are increasing. There are so many more of them. People are finding objects. One guy found that they call it the Buga sphere. One guy found a sphere. Another guy found this elongated cigar-like metallic object that looks a lot like that sphere, but just elongated. People are finding all kinds of weird junk, and people are seeing lights, and they're seeing UFOs. And All of these phenomena are just increasing. A lot of people seeing plasmoids. I think I've seen one myself. Plasmoids are very interesting and not good for the atmosphere, by the way. But we also know now plasmoids can be created in a lab. What is it? Is it an entity like within our government that wants us to think something strange is going on, that we're on the brink of some type of disclosure, about UAPs or these interdimensional beings? And of course, the Age of Disclosure movie coming out on, I think that's November 21st on, I believe it's Netflix, where they're going to talk about that. Marco Rubio is going to talk about it. There is definitely something really weird going on. And Sherry says, yes, that's incredible. All of the carvings were telling. I think it's really weird. It's just there's a lot of weird stuff going on. I don't know if they're going to try to spring it to us, make create chaos. In my opinion, the government's already told us that UFOs are real, that they truly do exist. They're not of our technology, that these creatures who are, we refer to them as extraterrestrials or interdimensional beings, that yes, they are real. And the more we learn about this stuff, quite honestly, the more disturbing and weird it is. In my opinion, it's very disturbing. I think about it probably more than the average person because it's just so strange. And then it starts making you think about life and what is life, and what are we doing, running around every day worrying about politics and all this other weird junk, when you start learning about what these interdimensional beings are and what their goal is. Then you kind of start thinking about things like, gosh, does any of it really matter? All of these things I do in my daily life, really none of it really matters if some of these theories are true. And so I think it's kind of interesting for that reason. And I understand why the government doesn't want to just come right out and sit down and say, okay, American people, can you imagine Donald Trump on a podium saying, all right, Americans, you know, today's the day we're revealing, that these interdimensional beings are real. They live underground. They're taking your souls. People would freak out. It'd be absolute chaos. People would be jumping off of skyscrapers, crashing planes, all kinds of crazy junk. I understand why that doesn't happen. But the government, if you listen to the UAP hearings, and trust me, there's so much information there. Most people don't even, they want to talk about UFOs and they want to talk about what's out there, but they don't watch the hearings. They don't watch the David Grush. I can guarantee you, most of you have not went back and watched that David Grush interview as many times as we've talked about it, where they literally do tell us everything there is to know for the most part. And once you hear those interviews, you're like, okay, I get it. Most of it, they're not telling us everything, of course. You listen to Tucker Carlson talking about it, and you're like, okay, I get it. They're telling us. They've already told us. But is there something more going on? Is a Project Bluebeam in the works? Is Three Eye Atlas truly just a comet? Is it something more than a comet? I think it's a comet, but I think somebody out there wants us to believe it's more than a comet. And then we have to start asking, why do they want us to believe that? Look at all the other comets we've had lately. We've had Lemon, we've had Swan, all kind of passing through at the same time, and no one says a whole lot about either of those. And yes, Three Eye Atlas is coming from a different solar system. It's only the third time that's ever happened, so that is certainly unusual. But even astrophysicists are very conflicted. Some, the most notable being that I know I'm probably never saying his name right, Avi Loeb, where he is absolutely convinced there's something really strange going on with Three Eye Atlas. He really does. He absolutely thinks it's on a trajectory. He thinks that's, we've been hearing the pings, coming from Atlas and all this other stuff, and he thinks that there's certainly something more to it. I don't know. Is he paid to say that? Is he part of Project Bluebeam? I don't know. A lot of other astrophysicists are like, nah, nothing to see here. It's just a big rock floating through space, and it's going to continue to float right out of our solar system. Nothing to worry about. And then you hear other people. Elon Musk talked about this the other day. Well, maybe it's really on a path towards the United States, or not the United States, sorry, but the world, towards hitting, Earth. And he's like, well, that would take out an entire continent if that happened. If Atlas hit Earth, it would take out an entire continent. And so that, then you start thinking about that. Well, that's pretty serious too. I don't think it's going to brush near Earth. I don't think that's anything we have to worry about. But you know what? You just never know what's going on out there, do we? Never know. Either way, guys, that's it for me. I have got to run. I've got work to do. I'm probably going to lose my voice here shortly. As far as I know, I continue to plan to have a show every day this week. I'll hopefully have some, good things coming through. And we hear about what's going on in New York tomorrow. If something happens, I'll let you guys know ahead of time. Sometimes I get called into work not sure what my health situation is going to be. I've been feeling pretty darn rough the past couple days. That the last time I had the biopsy done, I was fine. The procedure went well. Didn't feel anything afterwards. This time is a completely different story. I feel absolutely awful. It's like I feel like I can't breathe and my lungs hurt and I'm super tired. And it just took a lot out of me for some really weird reason that I don't yet fully understand. I've been having a really hard time keeping my body temperature normal. It's like my body temperature is super low and it makes me really tired. So I've been like covering up with blankets and turning the heater on and things like that. So it's a different time every single day. We'll see how it goes. But thank you so much for joining me today. I do appreciate all of you, all of your comments, and I love talking to you guys about all of these different situations. We will talk to you all tomorrow. I hope you guys all have a fantastic day, and I will look forward to seeing you in the morning.